How's it going, everybody? My name is Christopher, this is my dad Leighton, and this is the Oosthuizen Show. And today on our final episode for Season 1, this is episode 18, we're discussing how to teach your dog to swim. But before we get into that, a few words from our sponsors.
So, of course, our main sponsor is Partners Dog Training. It's our dog training school, partnersdogs.com. Very privileged to have as many great, wonderful clients. We've been doing a lot of expansion here over the last while, and I get to meet and see a lot of the clients walking in, and it's really awesome to have them really appreciate everything we do for their dogs. And I've got a couple of cool stories to tell you about those.
Definitely. Yep. And if you aren't able to visit us here in Arizona, you can go onto Facebook Messenger and search HeyLudwig to get access to a AI dog trainer. Basically, you tell it about your dog's behavioral traits, and it uses those to create personalized curriculums based on those behaviors to solve problems and everything else on the line. So as he mentioned, we're doing a lot of expansion here at the school. We're just about to finish up really the last kind of leg of the outdoor expansion, the expansion of our daycare, the new fencing we put in. We've got actually someone asked me the other day, what happens if their dog, who can jump about 6-7 feet in the air, what do we have in place in order to kind of guard against that? And I said, well, we actually have 7-foot fences. They're kind of like pool fences, so there's no kind of slats to be able to track on for dogs to get traction and be able to scale over the top of the wall. So they're really, really safe, really secure, and that's the reason why we did that, is to make sure that the dogs that have a little bit more energy and have the ability to jump don't have the chance to get out of here. But so we're just about to wrap up that expansion. We have some other really exciting news, which is that the dock pool, which has been down for about 2 years now, is finally back up and running. We've got the new pool fencing around it, and we actually just gave it a clean today, and we'll be offering it for dogs that are in boarding and or daycare that have training, that are doing training with us here at the school. So if you want your dog to learn how to swim and possibly even learn how to do a little bit of jumping off the dock, really, really beneficial for building their confidence. And we're going to talk a little bit more today about how to actually teach your dog to swim back at home. But if you want to teach your dog to swim here at the school, then bring him in. We're really busy right now for our boarding season.
Very busy.
Very busy. We're at absolute pretty much capacity. We actually have a 7-day minimum for people basically for the next 2 months in order to get reservations here. So if you are wanting to get your reservation, get it in now. Otherwise, you may be out of luck. And that's really all the housekeeping that I have. So we wanted to get into the subject today, talking about how to teach your dog to swim. And we actually did an episode on this, I would say 3 or 4 years ago for Channel 12. That was one of the first ones that we ever did for them, at least when we had a segment going with them a while back, teaching dogs how to swim, because surprisingly enough, a lot of dogs actually don't know how to swim.
Yep, it's actually crazy.
Yeah.
You want to see if you can find that live, because I'm not finding it online. So this whole thing about dogs and swimming, let me give you a couple of suggestions on that, or pointers on that. The first thing is, not all dogs can swim. A lot of people don't realize that it's not a natural ability. There are some dogs, obviously, some of the Goldens, the Retrievers, that are natural swimmers, but there's a lot of breeds out there that do not have the ability to swim. I have a story that a couple of years ago, it's probably 10 years ago now, with Kalina, one of our office staff. Actually, she was our office manager, and she had a Great Dane like us, and when she took her dog into the pool, he swam around for the first 10-15 seconds, and all of a sudden he started struggling, and if we hadn't been there and been able to save him, he probably would have gone under. So it's definitely something that you want to consider, and we're going to give you some tips tonight on how to train your dog to swim, as well as some of the ways that we can kind of help you out with dogs that are resistant to being in the water.
Yeah, definitely. What would you say is the best type of environment for a dog that may be a little bit nervous first stepping into the pool? Especially like pools at home don't really have, I know for our pool here, we just built a new fancy ramp and so forth, specifically for dogs that may be a little bit apprehensive first going into the water, because it is a different type of texture, different type of kind of environment. It's a weird sensation that they're stepping into. And so we have a special ramp that's built at a very small gradual slope so that the dogs can really get their feet wet, and they can stand on a platform and a landing at the edge of the ramp so that they can kind of get accustomed to it. But for pools at home, which are either just steps or sometimes they only have a ladder, what do you recommend for people setting that up at home?
So to go to the pool that we're talking about now, our dog pool. So the dog pool was originally built as a competition pool. We had a franchise and we were running dog competitions, which is a huge amount of fun, but it's an enormous amount of work as well. Okay. And it has a specific ramp that has to be used for that pool. When we decided to bring the pool back again and we're not doing a lot of dock diving anymore, then I decided to change the design of the ramp. And the reason why we did that is so that now it's much more easier for us to actually be on the ramp with the dog. Instead of having to try and balance on the slope, we can actually stand on the ramp. And that leads me into how to do it with your dog in your pool. The easiest way to teach your dog to swim, let's break this down into 3 categories. Dogs that are somewhat resistant to water, dogs that are very easy swimmers, and then we'll talk at the end about dogs that are extremely resistant. Don't want to know about it, panic, stress out. When they're in the water, they're splashing around, etc. I'll come back to that last. So dogs that are somewhat resistant, the way to bring them into the water is you bring them onto that first step of your pool. You always wanted to remember a couple of things. The first thing is that you want to train your dog to go back to a common area, what we call a default behavior, right? So if your dog falls in the pool, if your dog's playing in the pool with you, you want to train them to go to this step as the default step. Now, once your dog's more experienced and they're able to swim on their own and jump in the pool and whatever, then you can kind of relax that. But generally, dogs do not do well getting out the side of a pool. They kind of pull themselves up, and they need a lot of power to be able to pull themselves out of the pool. If they're a heavy coated dog, so like the Goldens or the Shepherds or anything like that, their coats get so waterlogged that they can almost not pull themselves out. And if they're tired or fatigued, there's no way they're getting out the pool. So that first step to train the dog to come to that step, that's a really critical step. Once you've got your dog on that step, then what we want to do is we want to try and lure them into the water in a controlled situation. So what controlled means is we don't want to put a leash on them and just drag them into the water. That's how we used to do it in the old days. It does work, but it also panics a lot of dogs, and if you have a dog that is resistant, it could do a lot of damage to that dog. So the trick to doing this is to lure the dog gently. Now, if you have a dog that's a little resistant, putting a life jacket, you actually can buy doggy life jackets. They're about $40-$50. You put it on your dog and that'll help them float. The advantage of helping them to float,
yeah.
What are you gonna say?
I was gonna say that's probably beneficial for any dog's kind of first time, just so you don't run into any emergencies or anything like that.
Absolutely. And they're really a good investment because you'll use it for a while and then later on you probably won't need it after that, but it does give the dog a lot more kind of confidence, if you want to call it that, or just that peace of mind or eases their insecurities when they don't go down. And then also what it doesn't do is that you have a situation where dogs go in the water where they go vertical like that. Their back end sinks, they start splashing around the front feet. That's not efficient at all. What we want to do is train them to level out, to balance out their dogs. And a life jacket that you put on the dog, you strap it on the dog, that does that. It's very effective.
What about a dog that is in the water and is fine in the water, but the second they start swimming, that's when they start freaking out?
Yep. So that's a common thing. That happens to dogs almost probably, I guess 80% of the time. 8 out of 10 dogs will splash. The moment you hear that front feet splash, then we know the dog is not swimming efficiently. We also know they're going to fatigue real fast. Now, if you have a very shallow pool, they get their back end down. They can sometimes touch the bottom of the water, but that's not the way you want to train. You want to generally train. It's the same with anything in life. You want to train the correct way, and the correct way is to balance the dog so that they're swimming strongly, that they're striding forward, pulling with their front paws and driving forward. Dogs can actually swim pretty fast. They can, I wouldn't say they could outswim a human. Actually, I'm friends with Roland Skuman. I don't know if you guys know who that is, but he's an Olympic swimmer from South Africa. And he and I joked many times about seeing whether we could put a dog against him to see which one would actually win in a pool.
I doubt a human's faster.
You think a human can swim faster?
Yeah.
You should see some dogs swim. There's actually a test that we do. Oh gosh, Whitney, I hope you guys, is Whitney watching tonight? Because I don't know. She's actually on vacation right now. But I can't remember the time, but it's around 4 to 5 seconds that a dog can swim from one end of the pool to the other, which is roughly 40 feet.
Yeah, but isn't that exercise where they're also including the jump into it? And the
no,
dogs that typically
so we time it from when they hit the water and then they have to swim to the end of the pool, the end of the pool.
Right, but if a dog has a further jump, then they don't have to swim as far, and so
correct.
the times can get a lot quicker.
Yep. But anyway, the point is that they can swim pretty fast. Now again, these are dogs that are trained to swim. They have lots and lots of practice. Dogs fatigue very quickly in a pool, so you got to watch out for that. But having said that, a pool is also really good exercise for your dog. So I'm a huge fan of rehabilitating dogs in water.
Helps a lot with joints, like older dogs.
Kim Lindenmeyer is another friend of mine, a trainer, and they have an awesome program. I actually should have asked him to come on tonight and chat with us about it. Maybe we'll do that in the future. But they have a great program where they rehabilitate dogs in water by using special treads and treadmills and things that are under the water. So swimming in general is a really good idea.
And I know for dogs that we're training here to learn how to swim, what we do is we wear a t-shirt and we wear clothing.
The humans.
Yeah, the humans and so forth. So that way, if a dog does start to stress out in the water, what you can do is you can hold them and then teach them how to be comfortable and be kind of secure in the water, because you're essentially doing the same thing that a life vest would be doing by holding them up, teaching them how to actually swim and so forth. Obviously, the caveat being that you have to make sure that they don't scratch the hell out of you.
Yeah, and I just realized we never finished telling you about how to actually. So once we talk about luring the dog, we want to try and lure them off that front step. They've got their life jacket on. If you don't have a life jacket, then you can kind of hold the dog or maybe put a harness on the dog. That also works well. And what you do is you lure them off the step. But here's the trick. When you come off the step, you want to turn around and go back onto the step. So literally do like a little U-turn around you and back on the step. We don't want the dog treading water for more than maybe 3 or 4 seconds and then they're back on that step again. Keep their confidence level up. If you allow the dog to come out and they start splashing around and freaking out, you actually set yourself back. So do this in baby steps. Once you've got that down, then you can start making those circles bigger and bigger. And what you're actually doing is training your dog how to go out, turn around, and come back again. And you gradually move further and further away from the step, making sure that they don't panic. And I keep saying that because a lot of times when we're teaching a class, then people will panic their dogs, and I'm like, okay, you don't want to do that, because the panic actually sets you back. It's not moving forward. It's kind of like 2 steps forward, one step back, and you want to keep moving forward. And something that Christopher mentioned when he talked about the t-shirts, just so that you know, if you have a dog that tries to grab onto you or they turn towards you, what you do is just gently push them away from you, still holding them by the one hand on the scruff of their neck or on a collar, and the other hand holding the life jacket or the harness or the body, and you kind of just drive them around in a circle, kind of like an engine around you, around and around. That way they don't climb on you, they don't scratch you, they don't hurt you, and as Christopher said, make sure you're wearing a shirt.
So what about a dog that has a ton of drive and just a ton of energy, and in the process, obviously they're loving the swim time, they're in the water, they're swimming fine, but they almost don't want to stop swimming so much that they tire themselves out and so forth. And especially if you're using some type of reward like a toy or a ball, or you're building up their drive and endurance, how do you kind of ride that line? Like, what is the appropriate length of time for a dog that's swimming in the water but obviously not exacerbating themselves where they might get into an emergency type situation?
So it depends on a dog-to-dog basis. This very high drive dogs will often have a situation where their drive overpowers or exceeds their brain, if you want to put it that way. And so they'll keep on going to the point that they literally cannot function anymore. And then when the areas where they have weaknesses, so for instance when the dog has to pull itself out of the pool or climb up the ramp or do things like that, that's where you'll start seeing that fatigue kicking in and where it can become risky. We are always paying attention to the dogs really carefully. We watch for little signs, look to see where the dog starts to get lazy on
taking in water when they're swimming.
Taking in water. That's actually a good point. It's not bad for your dog to drink pool water, but I wouldn't allow it to. I wouldn't encourage it excessively. Now you get some dogs as they jump in the pool, they're constantly just licking, meaning swallowing water. That's not a good idea. Just discourage them, kind of like get their attention, make them focus on you. Your basic training, we always talk about our basic training. Your basic training takes, needs to kind of take control at this stage. And then by getting the dog to focus on you, they're not focusing on drinking water.
So would you say just like a length of time? So
like length of time,
15 minutes, or obviously it changes per dog, but like for a dog that has a high energy and maybe a lot of endurance and so forth, you do want to try and stay under a length of time where they're not going to be completely exacerbated.
Yep. So there's certain dogs that will swim for a minute or 2 minutes and that's it, they're done. Yeah. And then I know other dogs that will be in the pool for half an hour and they're still looking good. It obviously depends on the endurance your dog's built up, the experience they have, how much you've swum them in water, how long you've swum them in the water, etc. The most important thing to remember is just pay attention to what your dog is doing and make sure that they are in control, that you don't see them stumbling if they're coming out the water or anything like that. If they're coughing up water, any of those signs, you got to stop them immediately. Going back to the toy thing, or using the toys are great distractors, but they're also really make sure that you have a toy that floats. We have a dog, Crush. My Dutch Shepherd will actually swim down to the bottom of the pool, and while people think that's really cool, I notice when he does that really knocks the heck out of him afterwards. So I don't encourage people to get their dogs to actually swim underwater. And so if you have a pool, a toy that floats, that keeps the dog above water and doesn't encourage it to go down.
Well, and in the same kind of aspect, if a toy does sink to the bottom of the pool, what could happen is that the dog just starts circling around the toy, and they don't want to get out of the water. They don't want to change their position because they're really trying to get to that toy. So making sure that they don't have access to things that is encouraging their drive, but that might sink and cause them to potentially tire them out a lot faster than what should be done. In terms of, let's say, worst case scenario, a dog does start to sink or starts to take in water and so forth, what is the kind of procedure in terms of getting them out the pool? Maybe, obviously, worst case, doing CPR or something like that.
Well, now you're into extreme situations. That doesn't happen very often. We've trained, I don't know, 3,000 or 4,000 dogs, I suppose, somewhere around there, and we've never had a situation like that. We've had a couple of close calls where we had to grab the dog and pull them out of the water. But again, based on those numbers, for the most part, it's when people are not paying attention. We don't allow inexperienced handlers to swim their dogs in our pools unless there's an instructor present. That's more of a liability-ish thing.
Yeah, right now we're not allowing it.
And right now we're not doing that at all because we had issues with that last year. So we have people that monitor that, and the instructors are trained how to monitor that. And so if you have your own dog at home, you want to make sure that you're paying attention to that and keeping that under control. So any questions from you guys? I see we've got quite a few people following us tonight. That's awesome. Nice of you guys to join us. Daniel and Melanie's there. I felt so badly. I didn't recognize Melanie again the other day. I'm sorry, Melanie. Next time you come walk up, just smack me and then I'll know it's you. Monty's here, Tracy's here, and I saw Brooke Martin that joined in. Brooke used to train here many years ago, and it's nice to hear from you again, Brooke. So if you guys have got any questions about jumping or pools or swimming, something we hadn't talked about is little dogs.
I was just about to actually bring that up next, is little dogs.
Yeah, so a lot of people think that little dogs don't swim. Well, it couldn't be further from the truth. Let me tell you, I've seen some little dogs go through the water like little motorboats, and they get really keyed up and so forth. They're a little nervous in the beginning to go in, not always. I hate generalizing. Whenever I generalize and I say they, and I always think to myself, well, I'm going to second guess myself now because there are exceptions to every rule. But for the most part, you can train them. You do exactly the same thing. Make sure that you have a leash on them. Make sure you can control their sink rate. You get little baby life jackets that you can put them in. And something else. I wouldn't encourage dogs that are nervous of the water. I would not encourage them to jump into the water just yet. Dogs don't understand that thing. We actually have seen it where dogs will jump into the water and they're kind of like slapping at the top of the water thinking it's going to be a hard surface, and you can literally see the surprise on their face when they sink. We used to do a lot of really high-end photography of dogs jumping in the water, and it was pretty amazing to see, even with our dogs, like with Crush. He puts his head up and you think he was like it was the worst thing in the world. But let me tell you something, Crush is one of the reasons I brought the dog back. Well, that and Kelly, of course. Kelly was hounding me. Kelly's our general manager. She was hounding me for the last year and a half, and I figured this is one way to make sure she stayed on here and looked after school so I can retire. Just kidding. But going back to the little dogs and so forth, as long as you again are just paying attention to what you're doing, you should be fine.
What about now I had a question, now I just kind of forgot it. No, I can't remember.
So one of the other things about that I just also remembered now about swimming your dog is they get a thing called swimmer's tail or happy tail. Not happy tail, I'm sorry. Dead tail, that's what, dead tail. So dead tail is so when a dog's tail naturally goes down, I'm talking about mostly the long tail dogs or medium tail dogs, when the tail goes down and when they want to lift their tail up, the base of the tail, just right where it meets the body, it's kind of say above their butthole if I can say that, but the base of the tail will pull up. When they've been swimming a lot, that they kind of use their tail almost as a balancing tool. I don't want to say rudder, but I suppose they're using some steering to it, but it's like a balancing tool in the water, and that forces that little tiny part, the base of the tail, to come up a lot more unnaturally. And so we'll sometimes see dogs that are swimming a lot, especially dogs that are swimming in cold water. And I'll come back to the cold water thing. But especially those, they'll develop a it's kind of a painful condition for them, where they get that swimmer's tail, and where you then have to stop your dog from swimming for a while, because it actually will hurt them. They actually feel that pain, and you'll see them, they'll yelp sometimes, or they'll show discomfort, etc. Let's talk about the hot and cold thing. So most dogs don't mind swimming in the winter. Our dogs will go in the water all year round. Obviously not as keen in the winter time, but if there's a toy in the water and he wants his toy, Crush is going in the water. And he will take his toy and put it on the side of the pool and flick it into the water with his nose, and then go chase the toy into the water, because he wants that motion, he wants that movement. It's the whole drive, or it's that chase drive kicking in, same as a dog chasing a tennis ball. So they can swim in the winter months. If you have water that is really icy, then that's probably not as good of an idea. But some dogs are fine with that. Other dogs will absolutely not go into the pool during the winter.
What about some of the both physical and health benefits to swimming?
Well, the first thing is it's low impact, so it's a lot less likely to injure your dog. The other thing is that if your dog does have a hurt, like Karnak, one of my dogs, has a back leg that he injured during French ring, or during bite work training. If I remember correctly, he was coming off the Palisade, the high jump, and he's always had this little limp. We've had it checked out, there's nothing can be done, he's just got this limp. Well, we found, so what happens is sometimes when he's doing bite work, when he's doing chase work, he'll slip. He won't put that leg down hard enough, and he'll slip. And actually, seeing as I'm saying that, I see lately that when he goes up the stairway at my house, he did it this evening, actually just before we went on air. Then he doesn't put that foot down properly. It kind of slips out, and then he falls, and he got hurt again tonight. It's just kind of like mild hurt, but still, we don't want to see them getting hurt. And I'm going to put him back in the pool. I'm going to start building up that strength. So what I do with them is that I'll throw a toy to the end of the pool, and I'll let them drive in the water till they get to that toy, and then I'll run out ahead of them, or I'll go to the other side of the pool and I'll take the toy out and I'll throw it back the other way on the other side of the pool. Then that way they have to swim back, and that builds up their strength in the legs, no different from way that you would rehab an injury and so forth.
Is there any type of benefits in terms of like confidence building,
Sure.
socialization?
Anytime you're doing stuff with your dog, you're building confidence. And that reminds me, I had a client just walk out today. They'd come to check on their dog, and it was funny because a week ago when they dropped their dogs off, the dog came in completely out of control, and they were struggling, and I kind of went over and helped them out a little bit. But I could see that they were happy to let me help out, but they weren't very happy with their dog at that stage. Anyway, they dropped the dog off for training, and today when they came through, I was out working again, out in the sun again, and I said, so how's it going? And they're like, a lot better than last week, and there were big smiles everywhere and so on. And basically what it is their dog now has some foundation. So they've learned, the dog is staying with us. They came to do a visit, but the dog has now learned that foundation, and they were so much happier. It was really awesome to see that.
Yeah, definitely. That's what about now I remember my question from earlier, for kids and so forth. Like, so for instance, if kids are playing in the pool and you have your dog running around the outside of the pool, maybe, obviously increasing their state of arousal with all the energy and adrenaline going on, how do you kind of balance that situation?
So it's funny, when I was a kid, it was 1973, 74, and I know because I know what school I was at the time. So I was like 10, 11 years of age. We had this game that we would play where we would run away from my dog, German Shepherd, and then when he got close, we'd run around the pool, because he couldn't come around the pool quite as fast as what we could go around the pool, running around the outside. Well, of course, one day he got a little too close, and I didn't jump in the pool fast enough, because that's obviously what we would do. And as I jumped in, he grabbed me on the back of my foot, and he basically tore the back of my leg open. Now, it wasn't like he was trying to bite me or attack me or anything like that. It was that chase drive, that drive that was kicking in. A lot of people want to say prey drive, but it's not really prey drive. It's more of a chase drive. And so that's something you want to guard against. And I actually discourage people from playing those kinds of games, because the dog doesn't see that as being it's more of a game where he just wants to grab that toy or chase that particular toy. So a lot of times when kids are splashing in the pool, making a noise, especially little kids, the dogs get really keyed up. That's not a good time to have your dog outside. So either use a lot of control, which you hopefully are able to do anyway, or put them up in a crate or in a kennel for that time that the kids are running around screaming and making a noise outside.
Cool. That's
all right.
That's all the questions I had.
So I think that's it for the night. I want to end up with one other thing. So we've got Father's Day coming up on Sunday, and I want to say, first of all, it's really a privilege for me to have Christopher work with me, and for me to be able to work with him. We're a family business. I grew up in a family business environment. My father and my mom were in the construction industry, and I did a lot of things with them and so forth over the years. My dad actually still works for us. He's not here right now. He's normally sitting on the other side of the studio watching us, but he's getting ready. We're taking them out to dinner tonight for Father's Day because we're going to be traveling on Father's Day. Yep. We're headed over to Europe, as we mentioned. We're going to be competing in the Czech Extreme Match, one of our favorite competitions anywhere. Phenomenal thing. We're not actually competing for the United States this time around, but anytime we're international and we're overseas, we kind of feel like we are representing our country and representing the US. We're not there as an official team this time, but it's going to be blessed. We're going to be shooting with JJ Ricardo. JJ is one of the top shooters in the world, and probably right now is the top shooter between him and Eric Rafael. But it's going to be a blast actually competing with them, and we might do a little team event with them, so that's really cool. And it kind of brings back to this whole thing that the ability for us to be able to do stuff with a father-son team really makes me feel real special. I'm trying not to get too emotional here right now, but we hope you guys all have a great Father's Day out there. Enjoy your kids, spend time with them, try and develop relationships. If you're going through a tough patch, make it work, guys. It's not worth the stress and the drama. Sometimes it's hard because it's a relationship, but you got to work on it. And I'm really privileged that I have a phenomenal relationship with my son Christopher, and I have a great relationship with my dad, and it's really cool. So, and Alessandra, yeah, my daughter. It's right. I don't know why I didn't think of her. Really appreciate it. We have a great family environment. Sarah does a lot to help us keep us all together, and I wish all of you guys, all you fathers out there, happy Father's Day. And
actually on that note, we're doing a special kind of Father's Day promotion we did for Mother's Day as well for our daycare dogs. So if you're bringing your dog to daycare, or if you've thought about bringing your dog to daycare, definitely come this Friday, as we're doing like a little kind of special card with all the daycare dogs and so forth. Fortunately, we can't do it for the boarding dogs, but like I said, we have about 60 or 70 dogs here boarding with us over the weekend and through the rest of the month, basically. And it would be probably 5 to 6 days worth of work in order to get all of the daycare or all of the boarding dogs through all the little cards and so forth that we're doing with the daycare dogs. But definitely come and check us out. We're probably going to we're taking a break now as the first season of the Oosthuizen show comes to an end, and I think we'll probably come back maybe end of July.
Okay.
All right. Thanks very much, guys. Have a great Father's Day. Have a great summer as it starts to heat up. Stay cool, and we will see you guys soon.